Hello students, and welcome to ROC, which is Recovery of Credit. In ROC, we will be recovering credit for English 1 and Unit 1, which is Formal Language and Formal Correspondence. So, in Formal Language and Formal Correspondence, we consider the audience and the purpose for a reason. So think about this. Why is considering your audience, that's who you are speaking to, and the purpose of your speaking or writing important when you are going to write a piece of text or speak to a particular individual? So purpose is the reason. So whether you're writing a blog post or delivering a speech, you must consider both your audience and your purpose. An audience consists of the people who will read your writing or listen to your speech. So it could be a physical audience like you would have at a play where you have a group of people sitting there, but it is also anyone who reads your writing. So any person who would be the target group that you want to read your writing. The purpose is your reason for writing or speaking. When participating in a discussion, writing to a prompt, or answering a question, you also need to consider your purpose and your audience as you deliver your response. And when you consider those things, your audience and your purpose, you increase the likelihood of whether your message is received clearly and correctly. So a skilled writer and a speaker needs to make thoughtful decisions about his or her register, tone, vocabulary, and voice in order to respond appropriately. So let's just review what those terms mean. Register refers to the use of formal or informal language, and tone is the writer's or speaker's attitude toward his or her topic. Vocabulary refers to the appropriate words for a given task, while voice is the distinctive use of language that conveys the personality of the writer or speaker. And all of those things come together to help us establish our communication. So when you are thinking carefully about the register, using formal language, remember formal language is the type of language that is most understood by the greatest number of people, while informal language is the language that's understood by a small group of people. Usually your closest friends and family, you can communicate well with informal language, but for people you do not know as well, it's more important to use formal language. So let's consider how knowing the audience and purpose of each of these situations impacts what you would say or write. Let's say you want your parent to allow you to go to a party. Think about how you would ask your parents or how you would write to your parents to request to be able to go to a party. Would you think carefully about your words? Would you speak to them in a respectful tone, or would you make a demand for them to allow you to go to a party? Probably not if that's your intention. You want to reach your goal, so you would want to consider how to get what you want. Or let's consider this one. Let's say you need to inform your teachers that you will be absent next week. Would you want to make sure that you're clear about which week, what assignments you're going to miss, probably why you're absent, and then maybe consider how you can make up those absences for your grade? You want to make sure that you have all of the information so that you can have the best outcome after your absence. Or let's say maybe your sister keeps borrowing your favorite jacket without your permission. How would you respond in that instance? Would you necessarily need to use formal language in that case? Probably not. Formal language is for the group that you are not as familiar with. Or let's say maybe you have a friend who's in an unhealthy relationship with her boyfriend. How would you try to convince her that that's not a good idea for her. So whenever we have real life situations, we have to consider who is our audience, why are we speaking to them, and how do our words affect whether our message is communicated clearly. So let's take a look at the formal versus informal sliding scale. Okay, so we have informal here at the top, formal here at the bottom. Notice that when you're speaking with people that you have less contact with, teachers, with people that you work with, like bosses, people in authority, you see it's more formal, whereas you move up the scale, your parents, you still want to use some formal language because they are authority figures in your life, but as you begin to move up the scale, speak with your friends, your siblings, you can be more informal. All right, so consider this scale with the kinds of words that you use, whether you use complete sentences or whether you use slang, whether you use abbreviations, or whether you write out those things, depends on who you are speaking to. So today we're going to focus on formal correspondence. And you might ask, what is correspondence? And correspondence is communication. It's usually through letters or emails. And what makes something formal correspondence is that the author is careful to use correct grammar. So in formal correspondence, we would not find abbreviations or emojis. We would find words that express a serious tone, and we would find proper formatting or structure. So we would use punctuation, we would use complete sentences, we would follow a guidelines or plan to have that correct structure. So when would we actually have a chance to write formal correspondence? In what circumstances? Well, maybe because when we're trying to persuade someone of a particular idea, we might want to use formal language so that we are very clear with what our argument is. Or maybe we need to inform someone about a particular topic. If we're giving information, we want to be very clear. So we would want to use formal correspondence because it is the type of language that is most easily understood by the greatest number of people. Or possibly we need to make a formal complaint. That, again, we don't want our message to be misunderstood. That would be a time to use formal correspondence, either a letter or email, or to request something. If you need your teacher to look at your grades, you would probably want to use a formal structure in your email to her or him. So let's look at the important parts of a formal email. Now in this unit, we did write a formal letter to the teacher, but in this makeup unit for recovery of credit, we're going to write a formal email. So it's just slightly different because email is an electronic communication. So some things you want to check when you're writing a formal email is you want to make sure that you're emailing from a formal business email address. For you want it to sound, civilized and mature. So maybe like this, my name is Heather Strawn, so it would be the first letter of my name. My first name is H. Strawn at example.com versus Purple Princess at example.com. You see how juvenile that name sounds? I don't know that I could be taken as seriously with like a nickname, which this is not my nickname, by the way, but I had to come up with something for you. So this one is not a formal email. The second thing that you want to make note of is that the subject line in your email should be meaningful and to the point. It should alert the reader to what your purpose is. You should always include a greeting, like Dear Mr. or Mrs. or Ms., and then the last name of the person you are addressing, so Dear Mrs. Strawn. And then the reason you want to do that is that you're setting the tone in your greeting. You want to have a polite, accepting tone, especially if you're trying to request something or persuade someone, versus a rude, condescending, or arrogant tone. So keep your tone polite with this greeting and your word choice. You want to start your email by briefly stating the reason that you are emailing. So be specific about why you're emailing. Maybe you mention an assignment by name and date, if that's the reason for your email. Tell what the problem is and give a possible solution. And it's okay to put a personal reason in the email text, because this information gives your email personality, which we call voice. You want to sign your email with a formal closing, like sincerely, kindest regards, or best wishes. And you want to include your full name, your first and last name. Lastly, you want to reread and proofread what you have written before you hit send. So what would that include? What are things that you want to reread and proofread? So you want to check, did you use spell check? Did you avoid contractions and abbreviations? For example, you want to avoid words like can't. You want to say cannot instead. Or before with the B and the for. You want to actually write out the word B-E-F-O-R-E and B-T-W, which I know means by the way, but some people may not. So spell those abbreviations and contractions out for your reader to make sure that they clearly understand you. Think about in your letter or your email, were you polite? Were you concise? Meaning, did you get to the point? And were you clear about your message? And is your information organized into the proper structure? So did you include the subject line, a greeting? Did you have a body paragraph of your email and a closing? So check for all of those components. So here's a good example of a formal email. So in your inbox, it may show up as new message. It has who it's written to, so it's written to me. The subject line, extra copies needed. So they've told the reader what it is about. And then we have the message. So let's read it. Dear Mrs. Strawn, I'm so sorry to bother you, but my dog literally ate my homework tonight. Would it be possible to get another copy of Speak, which we are reading? I know there might be a cost involved, so please let me know how much I need to pay to replace the book. I would truly appreciate your help because I do not want to get behind in my reading. P.S. I think you should know that my dog really enjoyed the book. Sincerely, I'm a student. Okay, so you notice here they have all of the components. They have the greeting. It's proper. The tone is, I don't want to bother you. I don't want to be an inconvenience. But then they got right to the point. I need another copy because my dog ate my homework. Then there's a possible solution. I know there might be a cost, but I'm willing to pay to replace it. And then look at the last line. I appreciate your help. And then this is a little bit of voice that they added. You don't always have to add it, but I do think it was funny, along with the fact that Speak, and we have a dog. There's a nice little pun there. And then they ended with the closing sincerely in their first and last name. That is a good email. Another example that you can look at, it's very similar. We just have it marked for you. We have our subject line, extra copy needed. First letters capitalized, to the point. Dear Mrs. Noel. And it's very similar. So we have our concise, to the point letter body that shows their personality. We have the acknowledgement of the mistake and offering of a possible solution. We have the professional and friendly closing and the full name. So we have all of these parts: subject line, greeting, letter body, and our closing. And don't forget that in your greeting you want to put a comma after the person's name. Okay, so that concludes the mini lesson. What I'd like for you to do now is to go back into the folder. You will find the assignment. It's a quiz assignment there on Schoology that I want you to complete, and it is to write a formal email to a particular situation. And that will take care of your Unit 1 recovery of credit, and then you will just have one more unit, Unit 2, to complete.